Death to DVR.
Is that really how the episode just ended? Or did my internet cut out?
No, I think that's how it ended.
That's the most... right now is the most angry I've been at the end of a show in a long time.
You don't like that cliffhanger?
No, I don't. I was so ready to see potentially what would have been a crazy fight scene of some kind.
I thought he was going to pull out a gun and shoot Frank.
I just wanted to see Ray be super intense, super dramatic. They start yelling at each other, and then a massive fight scene breaks out. And then he could threaten the redhead, too. That ups the stakes, you know?
So do you think they'll start next week with...
No, probably not. It'll probably start with Annie in the cage trying to clean in an assault rifle or something.
Annie in the cage on a stage near you this weekend. That sounds like a band.
No.
You don't like that?
I don't... You made it sound like a stripper show or something. Annie in a cage on stage?
That goes in line with the themes of the show. It's all right.
That would have put a little pep in their step if they had gone into that scene. I'm just saying. I don't know. Do you think the show's going to start out that way next week?
Probably not. No.
You don't trust this show, do you?
It'll start off with Ray leaving and being like, "See you later, Frank. Take it easy."
Well, Ray explained it all, and it was totally fine. So now moving on to the next thing. Now back to Casper. I found a contact up north.
Where is this up north? They've said up north like 800 times this season, but they've never gone up north.
I thought Vinci was Northern California.
I have no idea. I just want them to explain what up north is. And I've never struggled as hard as I am with this show with keeping up character names to faces. Like, I have no idea.
What did I ask you 10 minutes ago during the show?
You asked me the name of Taylor Kitsch's character.
Which is?
Paul Woodrow. Or Paulie, as his weird mom thing is.
Do you think his mom is in love with him?
I don't know. They had a really weird relationship when it was first introduced. About midway through this episode,
I didn't think I could be this passionate about this show. After how I talked last week, the whole show's just kind of been lackluster.
You're passionate. You're passionate now?
I didn't say... That doesn't mean it's good. I could passionately despise this show.
Okay, fair enough. Go ahead.
Right? What do you mean, go... What? I don't have anything else. I'm just saying... Did you say go on? I don't have a point.
I interrupted you, sorry.
To the American people, our revolution will happen. If society will continue to function and continue to multiply, resistance is useless. And now a word from your corporate overlords.
Hey, Phil, are you reading a book right now?
I am, actually.
What is it?
It's The Haunting of Hill House.
Well, would you consider listening to that book?
I would, yeah. It'd be pretty spooky, I think.
As in, would you consider buying it as an audiobook?
I think I might.
Well, I have good news for you. What if I said you could buy that audiobook on Audible?
I would say, how?
Just by going to audibletrial.com/death-to-DVR. You get a free 30-day trial of their subscription service and a free audiobook.
That's a hard deal to beat.
And I'm not shitting you. You can't beat that with a stick.
You surely cannot.
Promise me you're going to go to audibletrial.com/death-to-DVR to get free 30 days and a free audiobook.
You want me to promise that to you?
Yeah, I do.
I'm promising.
I want you to promise that.
Okay. Consider it promised.
If you don't know what Audible is, it's an audiobook subscription service. It's sort of like Netflix for books, except there's not a limit. It's a completely open library of pretty much any book that you can think of. It's owned by Amazon. So you can use your Amazon account to sign up for this.
You can. I've actually used Audible before, and it's good for downloading an audiobook and listening to it on the road.
There you go.
You know, driving to work.
Wherever, whenever. I'm Ryan Snelling here. Welcome to the Death to DVR podcast.
And I'm Philip Wilson.
It's just us tonight, Phil.
Yeah, it's just us. Filmbeef invades Death to DVR.
Well, I'm always on Death to DVR, so.
I usually am, so I guess it's not all that different.
Yeah. We're podcasting machines tonight. We just reviewed Ant-Man for Filmbeef, and now this. What do you think is better, Ant-Man or True Detective? No, that'd be a stupid conversation. You know what? After last week, this episode is probably more important than any other episode so far. Because we're supposed to transition from a slow burn into, well, just something else, right?
I mean, we've reached the halfway point of the season, so there's not enough hours left to do much of a slow burn. Like, it's got to start picking up.
So, do you feel like it did pick up? Do you feel like this was an entertaining episode?
It was definitely a better episode than last week. I thought last week's was super slow up until the crazy shootout. But I feel like they're still setting the stage for the things to come in the finale, and they're running out of time. We've got 3 episodes left. And that's it.
I agree that it was more entertaining than the past couple episodes. I do get a sense of the show sort of wrapping things up. I mean, we add a new layer to the storyline with Ray and his son. Actually, several more layers to that storyline. There was a time jump, right?
The only indicator of time so far was Ray mentioned that he's been sober for 60 days, and we saw when he became sober in the show. So I'm thinking there's probably about a month gap between the shootout and this episode.
Right.
Does that sound right?
Probably. Yeah. Also, we add a couple layers to Paulie. We didn't do much with Annie's character, and Frank was probably the most interesting I've seen him in this episode. Yeah? Agree?
I think so, yeah. But there's a whole lot of screen time devoted to him.
You know what we found out about Frank tonight? Incredibly racist. He got into a little thing with the Mexicans. Gonzalez were their names, as they said. Our name is Gonzalez. And then he threw out that bit about the Chinaman, right?
Yeah.
What's going on with this guy? I thought
he told him to go stand in front of a tank.
I thought the Californians were supposed to be liberal. This guy's crazy.
What was the name of the evil Ben Folds therapist guy?
What?
I don't know. For some reason, he just reminds me of Ben Folds.
How do you know what Ben Folds looks like?
Actually,
because I don't.
When I was at a restaurant the other day, he was on
Ben
the screen.
Folds?
Yeah. Anyway, I have no idea what this character's name is, but he's somehow tied into the Vinci Mayor and Ben Casper.
That's another level that we got to in this episode, which I think again reinforces my point that I don't know. I think this episode did a fine job bringing us to an end game.
You know what?
That was a great scene, I thought. Even though there's still some kind of weird dialogue. Every scene has, like, weird lines in it.
It's cool for cool's sake, I think. Like, every line is laced with some kind of, like, high intellect, cool...
Intellect?
Well,
I don't get intellect.
They're using big words or, like, alternate... I don't know. Like Frank saying, there's no bandwidth for this.
You think the writer's just like the writer just wrote an original line and then like highlighted a word and went to thesaurus.com and was like, hey, what else can we use here?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a separate point than what I'm making. I'm just hearing like ridiculous Like the blue balls in your heart. What?
That's what I'm saying. It's trying to be edgy and cool for the sake of being edgy and cool. And it comes off as like, I don't know if pretentious is the right word, but it's the one that jumps out to me. Like, it's the kind of guy that's gonna wear like a cabbie hat.
This is how the boy in Boyhood talks when he's in
there
college.
we go. Yeah, that's a great point, actually.
When the boy in Boyhood becomes an adult.
I think it's actually interesting that before this episode, you didn't seem too on board with this season. And after it, you're more on board. I'm actually going the opposite direction. I think that I'm starting to seriously wonder if I'm going to be satisfied with the conclusion. And I'm starting to think they don't have enough time to wrap up like 18 storylines because of how complicated and intricate this whole thing is.
This show still has a lot to prove to me, but I will say that if all the other episodes were on par with this one, I would feel a lot better about it. Definitely. Somebody asked me on Twitter, thank you, by the way, for the people that are interacting with us on Twitter. It's been awesome. That's what we want to get out of this the most, is to watch these shows with you all and really feel like a community. Somebody asked me on Twitter which show I anticipate more every week, because I do the Mr. Robot reviews on Wednesdays and this on Sundays, and Mr. Robot was my answer. Mr. Robot is still my answer, but I don't know. I do find it interesting that you're sort of you're finding reasons to nitpick now, which I'm surprised, because you probably love True Detective more than anybody else on this podcast, and I don't know. It's just interesting to hear you say that.
I'm just, like I said, I'm starting to get worried that they don't have enough time to wrap it up in a way that's satisfying. And I'm starting to notice even more and more, like, I realize it's not going to be good as the first season, but at the same time, I'm starting to think that it's just, like, not even remotely related to the first season. Like, in terms of style, substance, anything. There's a weird balance between the case and the four characters' lives at this point, because it's just so much to work with, right?
Right.
And, like, the first season was so good because it covered, like, 20 years of the two characters' lives.
Right.
And this one, I think, is struggling to figure out how to offset essentially 5 stories in one, and I don't know, I'm not digging it as much.
Which one are you more interested in? Like, in the finale, are you more hungry for a conclusion in Ray's personal life or the case of Ben Casper?
I would say Ray's personal life, especially after this episode. It kicked it up a notch.
Can you say that about every other character?
To an extent, I'm really interested in Paul, Taylor Kitsch's character. Like, I want to know about this Black Mountain thing that everyone keeps referencing.
Yeah.
And, like, in general, like, his life just seems so horrible. And, like, the whole thing about him being in denial about, I guess having gay thoughts at the very least, if not being, full-blown homosexual, is interesting. And, I don't know, really the only character whose arc I don't care about is Rachel McAdams, Bezeritas. There's not a whole lot there yet. I think there will be by the end, but...
Basically, my point is, I don't care at all about the case that they're working on.
I don't think it's nearly as interesting as the first season's case.
It isn't. It's not. Like, I don't know. So, like... For example, Ray referenced getting shot at the end of season or episode 2, and I kind of had forgotten that happened. It's right. Like, and I don't know if that serves your point. There's just it's so intricate and complex. There's just too much going on that, like, I'm having a hard time figuring out what I'm supposed to concentrate on. And I've probably missed a lot of, anything. Clues about the case, maybe. I don't know. Like, when characters come to realizations, I don't know where they're drawing from.
Right, yeah, I catch myself doing that too. I'm like, did they already explain it, or are they going to explain it in the future?
Yeah.
I almost feel like I'm not smart enough to keep up with how much is going on, and I need to, like, pause it every 10 minutes and reflect.
But it could be the show's fault. It's not always the audience's fault.
What I think's interesting, I haven't looked it up for this season, but I know in the first season there were all these theories about what the case was, like who did it, and all this other stuff. But I don't feel like there's as much to work with in this season as far as the case, where, you don't care about the case being resolved. In the first season, before I realized that it was more about the characters, I was really wanting to know who did it too, But
the case was far more interesting, like you said.
Yeah, like this season, I feel like it's predictable. Like, it's going to be someone tied in with that mayor. You know what I mean? Like, it's got to be someone higher up in the power structure doing this. And they'll figure it out whenever they infiltrate one of these parties. I think.
Blake.
Blake Lively.
No. Phil, I think the point you're trying to make is it's not just length. It's girth, too.
I don't think I'm trying to make that point, but...
Well, Rachel McAdams did. And I almost broke down in tears.
You like that?
No.
No.
Now I'm more self-conscious more than ever.
It's okay, man. Not everyone thinks like she does, okay?
Let's talk about... I thought that Taylor Kitsch was Keanu Reeves bad in this episode. Starting with the scene, the deposition of his case between him and the movie star, I was cringing at his acting and his dialogue.
I actually have been a pretty big fan of his work up until the trailer scene with his mother. I thought that whole sequence between the two of them was awful.
This week or the first one?
This week in this episode. I thought it was awful.
Yeah, I didn't know. I thought all of it was bad.
Like, I thought the deposition was fine. And everything before then, I was like, man, Taylor Kitsch is doing a good job, and I was kind of worried he wouldn't. Compared to these other people that are more established, I guess.
Right.
But that trailer scene is just bad. Where he's just like, no, out of nowhere, and it just, really bad. There were a couple scenes this week that were like that, where like a combo of the writing and the acting was just piss poor.
You shut your fucking mouth, you fucking poisoned coos.
By the way, we looked up the definition of coos, and the nicest way I can put it is a...
Are you allowed to say this?
Huh?
Are you allowed to say this?
I'm going to put it in the nicest terms possible.
All right.
It is it's referring to a woman's genitals that has recently engaged in intercourse.
So...
And the contents within.
So it is a essentially used vagina?
More or less. Like a loose woman's.
So like a roast beef scenario?
Jesus Christ.
That's what we called it in middle school.
What kind of middle school did you go to?
A private Catholic middle school.
I'm just kidding. We all know middle school was the time to learn every horrific thing possible.
As TJ Miller said. TJ Miller said at the Deadpool Comic-Con panel that basically he was touching on the point that Deadpool was rated R, and he said that he was cussing up a storm when they were kids at the panel, and he was just like, oh, by the time you're 13, you all have seen horses fucking on the internet.
I think it's 100% accurate.
Brilliant point.
We could do a whole podcast about middle school discovery, I think. Be an interesting talk.
Do you want to talk about other funny dialogue? Fuck that gangster shit, says Frank.
I didn't write down any other ones. What other ones did you write down?
Blue balls in your heart, already got that. I don't know. Oh, okay. Well, here's another point. I feel like they talk about too many things that have not happened inside the show, and they just lose me, right? And I guess that goes along with, I guess we keep circling back to
They're referencing things that we don't know if they've already covered or if they're going to cover in the future is essentially the problem, right?
I mean, I just think the show, again, that goes back to complexity. It hinges on so much shit that they either just don't have time to cover it in these 8 episodes, but I never know if, like, they're referring I've got hiccups. They're referring to something that I've seen already, or if I'm supposed to know what they're talking about. I don't know. And actually, you watch this with captioning on, right?
I do, yeah.
Why do you do that?
It's kind of... I pretty much only do that for this show and Game of Thrones. And it's because both shows are so complex and reference so many things that I want to know exactly, like, the spelling and everything of the names and the places.
And you think it makes a difference, huh?
I can't tell yet.
Well, does it help with Game of Thrones?
Absolutely. I encourage anyone who watches that to watch it with subtitles, at least for the first season, because otherwise you're going to be 100% lost.
Interesting.
But, I mean, like, we're complaining about this, but the first season was complex, too. And there were times where I was like, wait, what's happening? But I don't know. I guess it's because there was only 3 stories in there as opposed to the 5 that it was easier to try to figure out what was happening. And I don't know. Like, I tweeted out the True Detective Season 2, a puzzle I haven't quite figured out yet.
Nice.
I really don't know.
Did you see that Instagram picture that was not a wanted poster? It was a lost, like, missing poster, and it says lost in giant caps, and it's a picture of Ray and Frank, and it says interest.
A friend of mine from work that knows I watch the show, he sent me that picture.
To finish up, I want to talk about Ray a little bit, because, like we said, he's probably the most intriguing character. We actually saw Ray working for Frank, which I really liked. I guess he's not really a cop anymore, though, right?
No, he's not a cop. He's the one guy who works for the mayor or his precinct or whatever picked up his badge that said he works security for Frank Simeon.
Right. I was hoping that he was a cop still, and that could have kind of upped the ante a little bit.
I guess we should talk about that a little bit. What everyone's up to now. Like, Bezarita is working in, like, an evidence locker. Paul Woodrow's working as a fraud investigator.
Yeah.
And Frank's running his clubs with prostitutes and drugs.
And he moved.
And yeah, he moved.
Which is one of the most stressful things you can do in life. So
it's never fun. Anyway, back to Ray.
What's happening to Ray in his personal life is probably the most tragic thing you can come up with for a man.
I agree 100%. It's pretty awful.
So, and I guess that's what's keeping me involved, probably more than anything else in the show, I think, is that I don't think the conclusion to that can be that satisfying, because I sort of already know either way it could go, I guess. Well, okay, no, that's ignorant. I don't want to say that. But I don't think the conclusion will be as good as, maybe the wrap-up of one of these other storylines. But I don't know. I'm mostly invested in the show because of that, I think.
Let me ask you this. If you hadn't seen season 1 and Ray's arc wasn't as interesting, but everything else was the same, would you have jumped off the wagon by now if we didn't do the podcast?
On a weekly, I do not anticipate this show. I haven't done that in except every week after the first episode, I have not needed to see the next one. And it's only been for the podcast. It's going to be easier to talk about once I've seen it in completion, I guess. But just to put it simply, I don't find myself caring week to week.
Yeah.
Do you talk about True Detective outside of this podcast with people that you work with or other friends?
No one's caught up. I've tried. I've asked everyone.
Not even Cody's caught up. That's why he can't be on this podcast anymore.
Yeah, thanks, Cody.
And Jay's in stupid California, and Will's at work, and Kevin got another stupid job.
Everyone left us.
I just want to mention, I'll end on this. Okay, the scene where you talked about how much you enjoyed the opening theme song, right?
Which they changed the arrangement and the lyrics.
See, I didn't know that.
Week to week, apparently.
I didn't know that.
There's the captioning helping.
Yeah, but I don't retain the lyrics to that song. Have you listened to this song in the car before?
No. Is it good with the bass? I
No.
bet it is.
No, I just figured that'd be something you'd do.
I'll do it tomorrow on the way to work.
In the scene where Ray is talking to his son in the recorder, his cadence and the music that's playing behind it, it sounds like he is singing the theme song, sort of. Like that, it's really funny. So
I didn't think it at first, and when you said it, I couldn't unhear it. Like,
so guys, if you're listening to this, go back to the episode and find that scene. I think it's right before he discovers the prostitution ring, or trafficking thing.
Yeah, the connection between Frank's crony, Blake, and the Ben Folds therapist.
Somebody's gonna put this on the internet. Somebody's got to auto-tune it or something. So all right, yeah. If you listen to this, try to be the first one to do that. Make that video, and then make sure you credit us in the YouTube description. All right. Well, another episode will be out on Wednesday for Mr. Robot, and we'll see you back here. Phil's showing me a picture of Ben Folds. And then, but if you're a True Detective fan, meet us back here next Sunday night for another reaction. Thanks, Phil, for joining me.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Thank you for listening to Death to DVR.